Hey there, today I'm going to talk about the first Marvel character that had a successful movie series, and some guy who thinks Dracula owes him money. My name is Nate, and welcome to the Gamers Guild. So these two new characters are ones that I am really excited for, and for several reasons, including a very powerful new leadership ability for the new affiliation, the Midnight Suns, as well as just where these two characters can go into other affiliations like the Avengers and Web Warriors. But before I talk about all of that, I want to go ahead and talk about the guild's sponsor, Tritex Games. They have some great prices for MCP products, and their pre-order prices take 20% off of retail. Then additionally, you can use the code TRITEXGGCP5 at checkout for an extra 5% off for a grand total of 25% off, which is awesome, especially with this new Mystic Wave that should be hitting soon with the massive Dormammu and plenty of other Spellslingers. It is also thanks to Tritex that I get to do a monthly giveaway. To enter, all you need to do is be subscribed to the channel and comment on one of the Marvel Crisis Protocol videos that release that month to enter. And you can enter up to one time per video, so go crazy, just like the first character I'm going to be talking about today. Moon Knight has the alter ego of Mark Spector. He has 5 stamina, moves medium, is size 2 for 3 threat. His defenses across the board are 3s for the very average 3 threat character frame. His bow staff is his first attack. It's a physical one that has a range of 2, strength of 4 for 0 power. Like most strikes in the game, Mark will gain power equal to the damage dealt. Where things start to get a little bit crazy is that Moon Knight can reroll any number of attack dice for this attack, and if you manage to get a crit, wild, and a hit on the attack roll, you get to stagger the enemy character. I'm not sure how likely you are to be able to get this effect off with only 4 dice, but having a full selective reroll will certainly help, as will one of Moon Knight's superpowers sometimes. His next attack though is Throwing Crescents. They have a range of 4, strength of 4 for 0 power. It will gain Moon Knight a guaranteed power, and on a hit, the attack gains Rapid Fire, which allows Mr. Spector to make another Throwing Crescents attack at the same target. And that additional attack does not have the Rapid Fire special rule because, well, Rapid Fire is good enough as it is. Then finally we have the Mystic Avatar of Konoshu. It has a range of 3, strength of 7 for 4 power. Before damage is dealt, Moon Knight can push the target away short if they are size 2 or less. And then after the attack is resolved, Moon Knight will place himself within range 1 of the target. That's a really solid spender, and the fact that it's Mystic, it really adds something to his character that your average 3 threat doesn't have to be able to bring to the table. So a 7 dice Mystic is enough to definitely get him slotted in sometimes. As for superpowers, he has a reactive one called Chosen of Konoshu. It costs 2 and can be used when Moon Knight is targeted by a Mystic attack. He then gets to add 2 dice to his defense pool, and he cannot be advanced, pushed, or placed by effects of that attack. So it's kind of a niche situation card, but with more and more characters coming out with Mystic builders or only Mystic attacks, it's actually going to work out quite nicely. His next power is truly unique, and will be both a pain for you and your opponent to play and plan around, and that is his innate multiple personalities. It says at the start of this character's activation, roll 1 die. If the result is a crit, this character may make an additional action this turn that must be a move action. If the result is a wild or hit, the next attack made this activation adds 2 dice to its attack roll. And then finally, if the result is a block or a blank, this character gains 1 power, and then if you roll skull, nothing happens. So 7 out of 8 of these results are going to be doing something helpful for you. But I would certainly try to avoid situations where to pull off an important field dressing or something along those lines where you need to roll a specific result to pull off that play, because none of these are even close to hitting that 50% chance of happening. So they are all cool tricks to have up your sleeve that can make something happen that previously wasn't able to, like that 1 extra power to have access to the avatar attack, or maybe you get the roll to get some extra dice on your bow staff attack for a higher chance at that stagger. Now, rounding out Moon Knight's kit is the stealth ability and wall crawler. His injured side is the same as the healthy side, so no drastic changes. Moon Knight as a whole is a pretty interesting character for a couple of reasons. First of all, his spender is a mystic attack, and a big one at 7 dice. This is really cool because outside of Mysterio and this new wave of Convocation, we haven't seen any mystic attacks at this threat level, and the ones that we have seen don't hit this hard. So Moon Knight could become a really cool splash character because he has some built-in anti-Black Panther tech, along with any of the other characters who are vulnerable to mystic attacks. Aside from that, he is a character who will be difficult to play with and sometimes against because the result of what you get on multiple personalities can really swing what Moon Knight is going to try and do for a turn. Just for example, let's say we are playing an objective setup where you have to interact with the secure objective to score it, and the extraction objective is on the central line. Do you want to try and activate Moon Knight first or later? Because if you roll the result that gives him 2 extra dice, you'll definitely want to go later so that he can get off a pretty punching throwing crescents. But if you get that extra power, maybe you can try and interact with both the secure and an extraction objective. Or if you get really lucky and roll the crit, Moon Knight can grab the center objective and move back safely with it. And those are just his turn 1 options. Most of the time though, Moon Knight will be a character who can hit pretty hard from pretty far with his range 4 crescents, and you want to keep him at that range of 4 because most of the time he has stealth and the average fragile frame that we've seen on a lot of 3-threat characters. So if Moon Knight moves up and into the action where he will probably have an explosive time coming in, but if he doesn't have an escape plan, he will likely fall apart from any other character that's above average. Now, because this video is coming out a little bit late because of Dormammu and NashCon and other things, we actually have the small benefit of knowing all of the affiliations Moon Knight is currently a part of. So, first of all, he is a Midnight Sun along with Blade. But I'll talk about that more at the end. He is also affiliated with the Defenders and Web Warriors, and I won't lie, I'm not a huge fan of him in the Defenders. Maybe if we see a cheaper leader that can encourage Moon Knight, but as it stands, I don't see the Defenders heavily benefiting from Moon Knight, where Hawkeye can fill a very similar role as a ranged damage dealer. And Moon Knight's 4-dice attacks aren't always going to be able to get damage through to easily hex up your opponents with Doctor Strange's leadership. The Web Warriors, on the other hand, could be really interesting. Miles' leadership gives Mark a bit better of a chance at surviving if he gets up into the fray, and also allows him to reroll skulls on his bow staff attack, which is really nice. As well, on the all-webbed up turn, throwing crescents becomes a 6-dice rapid-fire attack that can tear through many a different type of enemy pretty quickly. With his addition to the Web Warriors, I can absolutely see a more attrition-based style of play for the Affiliation over the control one that the Affiliation started out with because of all their pulls and throws. Now, Miles could lead in Daredevil, Moon Knight, and Venom for quite the brawl. As for other affiliations that Moon Knight could do well in, Sam's Avengers could love a big mystic attack to help round out the toolkit, and because Mark should be pretty flush with power unless he is going up against a lot of mystic attacks, any of the affiliations that require spending power could pick him up without a problem. So, in a few words, Moon Knight will be chaotic, fragile, and will occasionally pack one crazy punch. His counterpart in the box, though, will always be slicing through your opponents, just as his name suggests. Blade has the alter ego of Eric Brooks. He has 6 stamina, moves medium, is size 2 for 4 threat. He has a 4 physical and mystic defense, while his energy defense is a little bit lower at 3 for an overall pretty durable build. His first attack features his Mystic Katana that has a range of 2, strength of 5 for 0 power. It has the usual bit about gaining power equal to the damage dealt, but it will also automatically give the enemy character the bleed special condition. And on a wild, the attack gains Pierce, which will change one of the target's crits, wilds, or blocks into a blank. So a well above average builder attack for Blade, and it doesn't stop there. His next one is Throwing Glaives. It's a physical attack, but they have a range and strength of 4 for 0 power. This attack guarantees 1 power for Blade, but also on a wild will cause the enemy character to bleed. So if Blade needs a guaranteed power or is just staying at arm's length, this attack is nice to have in the back pocket. And then finally we have Knight of the Dampire. This attack is also mystic, but more importantly it has a range of 3, rolls 7 dice for 4 power. And here's where Blade can become a freight train. If the target character already has the bleed special condition, Blade can reroll any number of his attack dice. on a 7-die attack. As well, this attack also gives out the guaranteed bleed condition in case they didn't already have one. And finally, after the attack is resolved, Blade can advance medium. It is just all good things here. Blade does also have a leadership ability for the Midnight Suns affiliation, but I will talk about that later. So, as for his superpowers, Blade has half-blood physiology, which allows him to perform a shake action for 1 power. I mean, this is good, like really, really good. Now, granted, it doesn't get around things like Wanda's and Crystal's shake denial bubbles, but otherwise this is still a solid superpower. He also has a reactive supernatural senses ability that costs 2 power to use. Eric can use it when he is defending against a physical or mystic attack after rolling your defense dice. It says you may reroll any number of your defense dice, including failure results. What is particularly great about this superpower is that it won't be a resource drain on Blade, because you not only get to see your opponent's roll, but also your own roll before you have to decide if you want to use it or not. So, to be crystal clear on the timing, this will be used after you roll in your initial defense roll, but before any crits are rolled in from the extra dice, both the attackers and the defenders. So this timing is quite superior when compared to something like Captain America's shield or Black Bolt's and Magneto's similar abilities that let them roll more dice. Finally, Blade's last power is his innate vampiric immortality. It says at the end of this character's activation, it gains 1 power and removes 1 damage from himself for each other character within range 2 of him that has the bleed condition. So it's kind of like Healing Factor Plus. So if Blade ends up dazing a character that was already bleeding and stays within range 2 of them, he will get to heal off of that. Additionally, if you have any allies that happen to be bleeding and are in range 2 of Blade at the end of his activation, he will also get to heal off of that. What is really great is that he is his own engine when it comes to the bleed synergy and doesn't really need outside help to really make it work out well for him, unlike some of the other characters that have also had some sort of bleed engine like Drax or Hela. But before I get into that, I do want to point out that his front side and injured side are the same. So for the usual tidbit about the good and the bad, there thankfully isn't much bad. Blade's base katana strike is really nice, and I'm always a fan of having Pierce on a builder. His big spender is also, again, really nice, since it has a guaranteed move, guaranteed condition that is relevant, and a decent chance at being able to re-roll what everything you need is just glorious. So he is fine on the damage output side, and as long as he has some power, he can be quite tanky most of the time as well. Blade will have a less fun time against energy attacks, but no more so than the average 3 or 4 threat character. But his additional ability to heal some at the end of an activation should let him be decently resilient. What is kind of fun is that if you are trying to ensure you keep priority, or just need Blade to heal up some, he can go and attack 2 separate targets with his katana and heal 2 and gain that 2 power so that he has his supernatural senses ability online. Another trick that could be considered when looking at Blade is that your shake is an attack. For example, if Blade is low on power, but still needs to get rid of a condition, he can use his throwing glaives to gain a power or replenish a power to use for his half-blood physiology. Now, what about the bad? Granted, Blade is a 4-threat character that doesn't have any control abilities, but he does have some built-in movement, so I find that pretty forgivable. And so really there's only one thing, and it's almost more of advice than a weakness for him, and that is to make sure you're going to be putting him into good matchups instead of bad ones. Blade is not a character you want to be throwing into a few things. 1, characters who are immune to bleed. There aren't too many out there, but it's certainly something to keep an eye on. You also want to make sure you're keeping him away from characters that have an unnaturally high mystic defense. Mysterio, Enchantress, Magneto, etc. Him having to target into a physical or a mystic defense of 4 isn't necessarily great, but once you see natural numbers higher than that, it might be best to make sure Blade is on the opposite side of the table, or stays at home on the Quinjet altogether. And finally, keep him away from big energy attacks, and I'm not talking about things like Doctor Strange's Bolts of Bedevilment. I'd be more concerned with Captain Marvel going binary, a full auto from Star-Lord, etc. Nothing crazy as far as advice goes, but if you get a good matchup on a 1v1 kind of front, Blade can hold his own extremely well. As for affiliations, Blade is the leader of the Midnight Suns, which is where you will see him most often. He is also an Avenger. I don't know how well he can necessarily fit into Sam's game plan, but he can certainly team up with War Machine and his Bleed Beam really nicely. But really, having him in Steve's Avengers can make him quite durable. As far as other affiliations though, I feel like Blade can really just slot in nicely at the 4 threat spot as a damage dealer, especially if the rest of your team is lacking in mystic attacks. Blade shouldn't ever be power starved between his guaranteed power from his glaives and the collateral power he will be gaining from his innate power. I will say Asgard doesn't benefit him as much since he already has the 1 power for a shake, and if you're looking for a mystic damage dealer in Asgard at 4 threat, just use Hela. She's also mighty durable. So now let's talk about the Midnight Suns affiliation. Blade is the leader, but they do already have a nicely filled out roster as well. In the team is Moon Knight, Iron Fist, Ghost Rider, Black Cat, Doctor Strange, and Dr. Voodoo. So they have a nice roster with Blade being a solid 4, a few good in affiliation 3s with Iron Fist and Moon Knight that can offer up some damage, or maybe sub in Black Cat along with Dr. Voodoo to have a really nice control and objective based list. So I'm really excited to see how this team ends up going on the table. And it doesn't hurt they already have a top 5 leadership ability in the game. And I can say that pretty confidently without even having seen it in use. Bump of the Night says once per turn at any time during an allied character's activation, it may spend 1 power. If it does, place that character within range 1 of its current position. Range 1 isn't always going to be a huge amount of space to be gained on the board, but if this was range 2, it would be absurdly busted, so I'm going to try to give the short version of just how good this is. A character with a 50mm base and a medium move can bump in the night, use a medium move and get to the center line objective, interact with it, and then move medium again to get that objective to a more safe location. This can also be used to double attack into someone and then bump out of their response range, or maybe into stealth with a character like Moon Knight. On a 65mm base, a range 1 place is almost 4 inches of movement, making the in-affiliation Ghost Rider very, very happy. In summary, movement abilities are always good, and having a leadership that just does it all for 1 power is going to find itself being very useful and powerful in different situations on the board. So what about other affiliation characters that want to join Blade and his team? The first 2 obvious choices to me are Ghost Spider and Kraven. Both of these characters have attacks that will trigger additional movement for them as long as they have moved in some way earlier in the turn. It is possible for Spider-Gwen to even sneak out some crazy Wakandan herb plays depending on where your opponent's characters end up on the table. Aside from that, characters that have a large base size will benefit most, but even the characters that struggle staying relevant against push and throw effects will be able to enjoy a small bump in that extra movement. There are additionally some sweet tactic cards that AMG has shown off on their stream that includes a card very similar to Wakanda Forever, in my opinion one of the strongest cards in the game, with Siege of Darkness. And another one that I think will be sneaky good called Bats the Ghost Hound that lets you change any 1 die in an attack or defense roll to a specific face. Just think about Moon Knight or Doctor Strange needing 1 more symbol to get their stagger or activation giving effect off on an attack, or even just pushing that 1 more damage through on a big target character like Magneto or Thanos, or making sure that your character can live by changing one of your blanks into a block. If that's what you need, then Bats will have you covered. That is all I have today. I do want to say thank you to all the members of the Guild Hall who are continuing to support what I am doing with the channel. Your support continues to allow me to explore new possibilities for the channel and really MCP and the community as a whole, as I got to host a decently large event here in Nashville last week. If you're interested in supporting the channel, check out the links down in the description for the Guild's Patreon page and the Tritex Games page, where you can use that discount code to let them know I sent you their way. As always, thank you all for watching. It really, really does mean a lot to me. And until next time, keep on gaming.